Providence determines what you do and where you are. I am discussing this on my podcast today. Please tell your friends. I promise you these words will help you understand that what you do and where you are really matter, even on your worst day. I am Ronnie Floyd. This is podcast number 70. Please stay tuned.
Ronnie Floyd is a leader of leaders with a vision to change the world. The 4 Leaders podcast with Ronnie Floyd is committed to investing, inspiring, and influencing your life and leadership today. With a legacy of investing in thousands and thousands of leaders throughout the years who've led in multiple arenas of leadership. Now is the time, and today is the day for Ronnie Floyd to invest, inspire, and influence you in a serious and responsible way. So spread the news and share the 4 Leaders podcast with others around the world. Now, here's your host, Ronnie Floyd.
It has been a while since I have shared some of the things that I have been doing personally. I want to welcome you today to the 4 Leaders podcast. I have been giving some of my time in these recent weeks to assisting a church just 1 hour south of us in Fort Smith, Arkansas. For the last few Sundays, I have been preaching, and when requested, I provide some insights into their present and future. The Grand Avenue Baptist Church in Fort Smith, Arkansas, is one of the legacy churches in the entire state of Arkansas. I'm helping them in this initial season as they are now without a pastor. Would you please pray for us? Pray for me as I provide this preaching leadership and encouragement along the way, as well as pray for the Grand Avenue Baptist Church in Fort Smith. I want to welcome you today to podcast number 70. Did you know that Providence determines what you do and where you are in your life? I want to talk to you about this today. So please tell your friends. These words will help you understand that what you do and where you are really matter, even on your worst day. And God knows, and we know if we live life long enough now, we will have some of those days that seem to be our worst day. But you know, I have a word of great encouragement for you today. There is nothing like it in life when you know Providence places you. In the Old Testament book of Esther, this question is asked in the 4th chapter and the 14th verse of Esther. Listen to this question. Who knows? Who knows? Well, in this story, almost 5 centuries before Jesus, in this Old Testament book called Esther, it speaks of an era like even today. God's people have been taken to a foreign land called Babylon. The Persians were in control, led by King Ahasuerus. An evil man, his name was Haman, was plotting to destroy the people of God. Yet, our God reigns. Can I get an amen? Yes, our God reigns. God's providence was at work through the lives of two people, ultimately, in this story, even though his providence is working through all. But the two people that I want to highlight just at this moment were the characters, real people, at a real time in history, a man named Mordecai and a woman named Esther. Now, Mordecai was a Jewish exile and the older cousin of Esther, whom God had raised up miraculously at that moment in history to be the queen of Persia. It was providence that placed Esther at the right time and place to accomplish God's purpose. I hope in your life and my life, when we finish this time today, that you can say, and you can say even weeks from now, I am convinced that God's providence is always at work. There are times when we wonder why we are where we are, and why are we doing what we are doing. There are those times when we have even more questions than that. But I really hope that you will become so literally encouraged due to this podcast today that even by the end of it, or days from now, or weeks from now, you will become convinced, so convinced that you can say, I am convinced that God's providence is always at work. I want to go back to this man named Haman. Haman had a goal, and that goal was to eliminate all the Jewish people. As his desires became the outrageous law of the entire land. Mordecai sent word to Queen Esther. The time was short and she could not wait or keep silent because God would deliver his people one way or the other. So then Mordecai said, who knows? Who knows? Mordecai wanted Esther to consider whether providence had her in the right place to accomplish God's purpose at that time. Every leader, in fact, every person, you need to be assured that God has you where you are at the right time to accomplish his purpose. We call this providence. If you're not willing to be used, God will raise someone else. God will fulfill his will and will fulfill his providence. This is why we need to become so absolutely captivated by this entire subject of providence that we can always rest assured that providence has me right where I am at this time to fulfill God's purposes in my life. You know, there's nothing like it when you know providence places you. Even when you question where you are, providence is at work. I've been in some interesting conversations all day today with great leaders conversing about God's will, God's plan, God's order, God's events, and even God's providence, individually and even collectively. You know, when we understand this, we have to ask ourselves this question. If you know providence places you, then what is God's purpose? And what does God want to accomplish? Well, today what I want to do is that I want to highlight just a few things in this podcast. Something that is just simple reality, biblically and theologically, but at the same time is one of the most challenging subjects that we could ever talk about, even though we would be assured that God always fulfills His will. But how do you know these things? How do you know when God places you? And that where you are and when you are there, God's purposes are going to be accomplished. I want to say these 4 things to you today. So listen carefully as I go through them briefly. First, above all, providence knows you. You know who providence is? Providence is not only an experience, but providence is a person. It's God. Providence knows you. Providence knows who you are, how He created you, and how He wants to use you with the gifts that He has given to you in your life. Even the tendencies in your life where you can be most effective. I'm telling you today, you need to understand clearly, providence knows you. You may think your spouse knows you, and she or he does, depending on your own gender. But I want you to know that providence knows you. God knows you more than your spouse knows you. If you're a wife, God knows you better than your husband knows you. And if you're a husband, God knows you better than your wife knows you. You see, providence knows you. From the beginning of time, providence created you. Providence knows you from the very beginning of who you were in God's mind, in God's heart. Because providence created you, breathed you into reality, and providence knows you. The second thing I want to say to you is providence places you where you need to be. Providence places you where you need to be. Even in the book of Acts, in chapter 17, I read it early this morning in my time of devotion. It tells us that God knows where we will be and when we will be. He determines where we are. You know why we know that? Because God said so, and because God knows us. And His providence places you where you need to be. I realize there are people today that do not like where they are. I have been there in my life. There are those moments we do not understand. I remember my youngest days of leadership. Lord, what are you doing? Why am I here? I did not understand. But when you look back at the providential hand of God, God was working all for His good in my life and unto His glory. And He is still doing that today. Providence places you where you need to be. And there's only one who ultimately knows where you need to be, and that is God Himself. Third, providence places you to accomplish God's purposes. That's right. God places you where you can accomplish God's purposes. God has many purposes, and He will use us along the way to fulfill some of those purposes that He wants us to fulfill ultimately in our lives. And it's providence that directs me. It is providence that puts me there. It is providence that has me at this moment, at this time in my life where I am, and in this moment, in the time of all human history, He has me living now, and He has you living now. Providence places you to accomplish God's purposes. And the fourth thing I want to say to you is this: providence instills peace and confidence. Providence instills peace and confidence. You are at the right place at the right time to accomplish God's purposes for your life and for His kingdom. Did you hear me? Providence is so powerful that providence can instill peace in your life and confidence in your life that you are right now at the right place at the right time to accomplish God's purposes for your life and for His kingdom. If you're having a bad day at the job, you may wonder that. Or you go home tonight and the family walks through this difficult moment that you don't even know about yet. Or other matters seemingly all of a sudden become complicated or complex, or even like they're falling apart. You may wonder all of that. But something in your mind, something in your heart needs to resonate so powerfully and demonstratively that providence comes in and gives you peace and confidence even in the midst of the storm. That God has me right here at this time, the right time, at the right place to accomplish God's purposes for my life and for His kingdom. That's how powerful God is, and that's who providence really is. So in conclusion, I want to challenge you. And I want to challenge you in this powerful manner. First, adjust your attitude. Adjust your attitude. Understand that providence knows you, and providence always knows what's best. So align your attitude with what God is saying. God knows you. And then surrender to God. 100% surrender to God. Whatever you will, God, I'm in. Then you do this, number 3. Whatever is before you, do it. Do it. Adjust your attitude to Providence. Surrender to God, who is Providence. And whatever is before you, Providence has arranged it. Providence has you there at the right time, at the right place, so you go and do it to accomplish God's purposes for your life and for His kingdom. I want you to understand today, Providence always knows what's best for you.
Thanks for tuning in. For more information on Ronnie Floyd, go to 4leaders.com. We'll see you next time.